Hey everybody, long time no see. Life's been busy, and now the only time I've got to make a video is while I'm getting some chores done. Um, but I hadn't really wanted to post anything for a while. You get to overthinking it and everything. But I feel like there's just a lot of bad advice out there, and thought maybe I could balance it out a bit and give at least what I think is decent advice. And won't be everybody's flavor of content, or not everybody's type of video, but that's fine. If anybody gets anything out of this, then I would say great. And something I've been thinking a lot about lately, with relationships and kind of figuring out what kind of person works for you is how your personalities match up. It's, to me, maybe the most important thing to figure out. And a lot of people don't understand themselves very well. And I think a helpful tool in learning how to understand yourself better and the people around you is being able to grasp personality traits and learn how to recognize those in yourself and the people around you. And I think the big 5 personality trait model is probably the best one. It makes the most sense to me. It's simple enough, but it accounts for a lot of behavior, human behavior, that is. Easiest way to remember it is ocean. So that's the O is trait openness. So that's how much people enjoy novel experience. People who love to travel, love art, love music, philosophy, trait openness. How much do you like novel experience? The head in the clouds type of person. That's high trait openness. They love fantasy. If you love fantasy, that's a sign of high trait openness. Open to new experience. So the way that would tie into, the importance of dating and long-term relationships and all that is most of the issues happen at the extremes. People who are really high or really low in these personality traits. So if you're really high in trait openness, you're constantly craving new experience, which means you're the type of person who's going to want to move a lot, see a lot of different places. You're going to want to work a lot of different jobs, or you're always chasing the novel. You're really into music and art and things like that. And then if the way you would know that you're low in that is simply just that you are not that into travel and novelty and fantasy and art and music. You like what you like, and you just kind of, stick to that. You're not looking for new experiences. You like what you know. And so the way you would, get into trouble in a relationship is if you're really high or low in it and they are the opposite of you, then, that's obviously going to cause a lot of issues. If one of you constantly wants to travel and is then that, and the other doesn't, then obviously that's an issue. If you're wanting to move a lot, if you're, you know, so yeah, what I'm getting at, if one of you is really high in it and one's really low, that's going to be problematic. So, not the best explanation, but hopefully it paints some picture. And then next, so you have the O for openness, C is for conscientiousness, and kind of break that into two things of industriousness. So that's someone's urge to be busy doing things, and also orderliness. And so on average, supposedly women are more orderly than men, and men are more industrious than women. Obviously, there's always variability at the individual level, but that's more commonly the case. So how that would tie into relationships would be pretty simple, really. It's like if one of you is super duper unorderly, so you have a very messy place, and then you're with somebody who's a neat freak. It doesn't take much imagination to figure out how that goes sour. If one person is always extremely irritated about how messy the other is, and the other is extremely irritated at how uptight and OCD the other one is, obviously that's going to cause issues in a long-term relationship. Okay. And then if someone's hyper industrious, they're like always needing to be busy, always needing to feel like they're being useful or doing useful things. If the other is like, I just want to relax every evening and have fun and just unwind, then that's obviously going to cause issues. So next is extroversion. Okay, so whether you're introverted or extroverted, if you're super outgoing and the other person isn't, one of you is going to want to be out socializing all the time and go to events and parties and dances, and you're always wanting to be out and about, and the other just wants to stay in and Netflix and chill or read, or they just don't like being out and about all the time, then that's problematic. And the thing is, it's like it's fine to be a little different. It's just when it's the extremes that are problematic, because you get a lot of people that are really outgoing, social butterflies, and you get major introverts that just want to be in doing their own thing. They're fine just being on their own all the time. It's important to understand that about yourself, about who you're dating, because if you're super introverted, a lot of people might think like, oh, it'd be good for you to be with an extrovert because they'll get you out and about, and it is important to kind of learn to get outside of your comfort a bit. There's no question about that. But if it's this constant, your innate feeling is to not want to do something that they constantly want to do, that's just going to add inherent friction in the relationship that is ongoing, because you're talking about very deeply rooted issues where it's someone's nature. And people do change a little bit, I think, but I think it's very rare that people change a lot. And so anywho, so extroversion, agreeableness. So how agreeable you are is essentially how polite and compassionate you are. And people can vary in how, obviously, some people can be really polite, but they're not that compassionate. I think I think one of the best ways to figure out really quickly how compassionate someone is like, did they really like elderly people or babies? Did they really, are they drawn to people who have needs, like obvious needs? And anywho, and polite is very obvious. It's just when you talk to them, just their ability to not be super abrasive in a conversation, and that they're of course there's some social awareness to that. But it's one of those things where if you're super polite and you're with someone who's super not polite, then you're always going to think about how, you're really going to notice that about them. And of course, if one of you is super duper compassionate and the other is very, very not compassionate, then you're going to have a hard time just understanding each other's way of looking at the world and people. And generally men are a little less compassionate than women. Women need to be more agreeable and compassionate to take care of little kids. Of course, these are all generalizations, but it's generally true that women are more compassionate than men. And that's important to understand. And so if you are a guy who is really not agreeable, if you're with someone who is super agreeable, then there's going to be a tendency that you come off as a tyrant and they're going to come off as the innocent victim. But even the compassionate person has certain types of aggression, and it's often going to manifest as passive aggressiveness because they have all this resentment about you being a tyrant to them, and they have a hard time standing up for themselves. And so that's not healthy for a relationship either. So, if you're on one of the extremes, you're going to need to be with someone who probably leans in that direction at least. Or if you're dating someone that's in the extremes of these traits, then you need to be kind of at least leaning that way, or it's going to definitely cause issues. And then the last one is trait neuroticism. And neuroticism essentially is just how sensitive you are to negative emotion, how easily rattled you are, how easily you experience negative emotion. And a lot of that is situational. If you're just a lot of things going wrong in life, then people are higher in neuroticism than when things are going really well. But generally speaking, some people just are more that way than others. And so if you're pretty easily rattled, I will say when it comes to this one, if you're with someone, either you or them is really high in trait neuroticism. I think this is the exception where at least one of you probably needs to be less that way and pretty low in neuroticism, so that you don't feed off of each other's negativity too much. One needs to kind of tone down the other in that situation. And so anywho, I know this is just somewhat ramblings and unorganized and probably bad content, really, but I do think it's really important to understand all that. And you can look up plenty of videos that go into more detail about those things. But I think that's extremely important to understand about yourself and learning to recognize those traits in other people. And for me, that was one of those things. Once I understood personalities a lot better, it allowed me to be a lot more self-aware. And when people point out your flaws and you're aware of them, it's easier to be okay with that, I guess. And it also makes it to where if you are dealing with someone else's flaws, that you can kind of pinpoint it rather than get to the root of the cause, rather than just getting angry about all of the little behaviors that are related to that personality trait. And it makes it easier to it's easier to deal with people when you understand them. And when you don't understand they are the way that they are, then you have a lot less patience and understanding, obviously. And so that's where a lot of relationships go south, is just that lack of understanding. And also just being with someone that doesn't fit you well. So, hopefully that is, I would say, a rough draft of information is at least somewhat helpful to somebody. And I just thought I can either just never post again, or I can post bad videos that give at least some decent information. So why not? I'm sure the lighting and the sound are really good, but I got a family, full-time job, and it's hard to find the time to edit videos at home because the kids always want to play. And I don't want to just be editing for hours. So this is what you get. Anywho. Hope you got something out of it. Y'all take care.